Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to my lecture this evening, and it's always a pleasure to see, even during this late, we still have an intellectual and exchange with you. Now, my topic today is about should Arab turn to the East? And of course, the East, from the Arab perspective, can be anything like beyond the Sea of Arabia, and including India, maybe right, Southeast Asia and China, and East Asia in general. Based on my personal cultural background, as Abbas just introduced, I'm a Chinese, and also based on my academic training, I'll focus on East Asia, in particular China, and with the explanation of Chinese major tradition, which is Confucianism. In fact, to use Confucianism to refer to not only Chinese tradition, but also East Asia tradition. As you may know, Confucianism was followed by China, Japan, Korea, and Vietnam during the different period of history. It is a very authentic Eastern Asia tradition. Now, before I continue, let's see this word Confucianism. You know a famous person, Confucius, who was born 2,000 years ago in China. But in English, also I think in Arabic, when you refer to Confucianism, you may just say, oh, Confucianism is one thing, a monolithic and a coherent one thing. But in fact, it is not, and it was not. In Chinese, if you talk about Confucianism, it can mean three things. First of all, Confucianism as a wisdom or philosophy, as a way of life, as a so this is the first kind of interpretation of a Confucianism. In Chinese, it's called Ru Xue. Ru Xue means Confucianism as a philosophy or as a study, as a wisdom. Secondly, you have Confucianism as a religion, a din. So Confucianism in this we call Ru Jiao. So which in this case Confucianism more would be understood like how Christians or Muslims or even Hindus worshipped or practiced their religion. And still, thirdly, we have a Confucianism as a political ideology. You know, Confucianism is called in Chinese called Rujia. So throughout 2,000 years of history, Confucianism many times was the official ideology of Chinese imperial China, Chinese state, which is that's why it's called Rujia. Now, this is Confucianism can mean. And another thing I want to emphasize is that Confucianism is more or less Confucianism as understood by us, by you today. It's more a kind of construction or manufacturing by some Christian Jesuit in 16th to 17th century. So when Christians went to China, they realized, oh, you know, China has this teaching, this Confucius different type. But they thought, okay, Confucianism was like Christianity in Europe. That's why when they introduced Confucianism to the West, to Europe, they introduced like Christianity of the China. They said, okay, we have a Jesus, then you have Confucius. And we have a Bible, and you have Analects, a Confucian book. And we have a church, and you have a family temple. So this is how Christians construct Confucianism, which I'm not sure how Arabs today, understand this point, but that's, I'm afraid that's not the whole picture, you know. Today, well, I'm going to give you the what authentic, real, before the construction of Christians, how Confucius is. Now, as UAE and Arab Muslim civilization, so the point I'm going to talk about the core values of Confucianism, most important things of Confucianism, which is, like, first of all, is talking about human relationships and cardinal virtues. So basically, Confucian is more care about this life, how we deal with each other. So 5 relationships. What 5? So you have between minister and the king. That's the first relationship. And between husband and wife. That's second relationship. Between brother and elder brother and younger brother. And between son and father. And lastly, between friends, you know, how to deal with friends. So these 5 relations are essential. So for Confucianism, how do you deal with these 5 relationships is how to become a good man, good person. So if you deal these 5 relationships successfully, you have 5 cardinal virtues. First of all, benevolence. See, as a king, you should be compassionate. You should love your people, love your ministers. And then you have a justice. You know, between the friends, you have second one is justice. Justice is between the father and the son. So you have to, father should behave like father. Son should behave like son. So what's the, basically talking about the duties. Like, as a father, you should give a substance to your son, support your son when he grew up. Son also means can be daughters. It doesn't mean like Confucianism is sexism, like only care about the male, doesn't care the female. But it's just, in the text, it talk about son. Zi can be mean son and a daughter, both in the same time. And between the friends, you have, trust. And so these are, how you deal with this 5 relationship is how you become, is a central point of the Confucianism. And so in this point, I get the second point is, first of all, in order to be a good person, you have to cultivate yourself. Self-cultivation, self-discipline. So this will be a little bit, so maybe alien for the Muslims or Christians, because in Muslim and in monotheism religion, people say, okay, God asked me to do it, Bible asked me to do it, Quran asked me to do it, that's why I'm doing it. If I do it good, I go to heaven. If I don't do good, I go to the hellfire. So there's a religious point to how to move to deal with 5 relationship or the morality. But in Confucianism, it's more emphasized yourself. You watch yourself and you discipline yourself. So it doesn't talk much about the God or the other world. And same thing, once you finish cultivating your soul, yourself, and you think, I'm a good person. Now next way you begin to deal with your family. 齐家, it means like cultivate your family. You arrange your family well. And if your family are going well, then next step will deal with your community, your county, your town, your city, or your country. And if you deal with your country successfully, then will be the whole world, bring peace to the world. So as you step by step, each step you have to cultivate your morality, your virtues. So this there will be the core value. And the third one I'm going to talk about is the harmony without uniformity. This is more talk about how Confucianism organized the society, or how Confucius would deal with others. Now, of course, in Chinese history, it's not just Confucianism. We have other school of thoughts, other things like legalism, like more like Sharia type of school of thoughts. And we have Taoism, Buddhism, and Moism, many philosophies. So one thing it's interesting, for Confucians or many Chinese, they are more eclectic. They can manage the different teachings or different places very harmoniously. For example, one person can be a Confucian when he's official. He's in the government. He's a Confucius. He follows Confucian morality, Confucian politics. But when he go back home, at home he's a Taoist. So a Taoist help you to cultivate your body, help you to achieve longevity. And when he is going to die, he's like, there must be some arrangement for my afterlife, or whether I'm going to it doesn't talk about heaven or hell, but it's talk about like, what is the end? Where are you going? When you die, what happened? So in this part, Buddhism provides some answers for Chinese. They would believe in Buddhism. So these are, you can see they are practical, or you can see they are eclectic. Eclectic means they choose different religion for their own benefit. And secondly, the fourth part is Zhen, is about virtual politics. What is the political thing for Confucianism? For Confucianism, political is morality, moral education. It's not about war, fighting, or money. It's about education. It's about morality. So in Chinese, Zhen, Zhen means political. Zhen, you have one side you have a knife, another side you have a literature. Because in the past, Chinese do no brush, no pen, but use knife to write on the bamboo. So basically, as a political, you write things to teach people to be a good person. So that means political. And another thing is meritocracy in political. How do you choose who should rule? Who should be the king? Who should be the minister? Who should be ruled? According to Confucians, it's more like a meritocracy. Whoever has the virtues, those virtues I talk about, 5 relationships, whoever care about the people, whoever love the people, whoever show the compassion, justice, then he will be picked up and be a king. So this is what we call meritocracy. Whoever has merit to rule. And how to judge this? It's people see. There's a very famous verse in Mencius. It's one of the Confucian philosophy. He said, okay, this king, he's bad. We need to remove him. Then they ask how? Like, how he's bad? Like, did you talk to the heaven? Heaven in Chinese is like a god. Like, then Mencius said, no, heaven didn't say. People say. Like what people say is what people expression is what heaven wants. So people representing the heaven, and people is not happy means heaven is not happy. So the king should go. So something like that. That's why people's welfare, whether people has economic, culture, and financial benefit, welfare is determine whether his king is just or not. And this is like original early Confucianism. Of course, in Song and Ming dynasty, this was about 1,000 years after Confucius, there's some development. Like added something new, which is number 5, Song Ming development. So we have a loyalty, filial piety, dignity, heavenly principle, pure knowing, and human designs. So you don't have to, if you explore it, it'll be too much for tonight. So basically, these are still developed out of the original 5 virtues or 5 relationships. Now, let me summarize. What is Confucianism about? So it's, from the modern point of view, it's altruism. So it's not about caring about yourself. Oh, me. No. It's care about your family, your community, your country, even eventually the whole world. It's altruism, the caring the others. So one famous from Analects is like, if you want to establish yourself, you have to establish others first. So that's the very core values. And the second thing is empathy. mean care, like developed from first value, benevolence or love. This is why this is important. Today we have things like if you want to save the people and you calculate, is it worth to do it? Does it cost a lot of money? So you do the calculation. Does he going to vote for me? Something that's calculative or rational. But in Confucianism is empathy, it's emotional. So when you see a kid is fell into a well and he's going to die, so you don't think about, you don't calculate, you don't say, should I save her or save him? You just do it right away. That's like pure compassion from your heart. You don't use here, you use here. You use your heart, not your mind. So that's another thing of Confucianism. And eventually ordered through culture and education. As I said, political for Confucianism is more like education. It's about moral education. So now, secondly, I'm going to talk about East Asia's modernity with experience modernity. As you know, Confucianism is being there for 2,000 years until late 19th century, early 20th century. Confucianism was replaced by other ideologies. Basically, we have different ideas, modern ideas from the West. So how East Asia countries, intellectuals responded to this? So we have a few things. After Confucianism was kind of removed from political, so we have nationalism, democracy, communism, different types of ideology in East Asia. But then, after some years, it was, again, Confucius was revived. Because something there, these people think has values. First of all is what I call rethinking Asian values. So, as you may know, there's 4 tigers and 4 dragons. 4 tigers like Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. 4 dragons, Thailand, Malaysia, and maybe another 2 countries I forgot. But this meaning the very economically developed countries in the 19th and 80s. Someone explained this success of economic development in East Asia because of Confucianism, because of Confucian values. So, like a former president of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, he said, see, we don't have democracy, we don't have a market economy, but Singapore is one of the very developed countries, very highly educated and very beautiful state in the country. This is because of our Asian values. It's because of Confucianism. Another example I'm showing is about in Japan. As you know, Japan is also one of the number 3. Previous it was number 2. Now it's after China. It's number 3. Number 3 economic power in the world. So why Japan's brand and state company got developed? It did not follow the Western model of capitalism or the free market, free trade model. It follows. People argue because of Confucian values. Because of Confucian values. So, first of all, is about employee loyalty. So, in Japan, an employee will be very loyal to the company. Even the company is in crisis. He will not he jump to another company or abandon his company. He will always stick with his company, even though he did not get paid. He will stick. This is my community, my brand, my life. So somehow, there's stories, a Japanese company going into bankrupt, and so the employees kill himself because he cannot say, my beloved company just got bankrupt and I kill himself. So for many Europeans, Americans, even today's China, people would say, bankrupt now, I'll go to another company, right? So in Japan, somebody says this is one reason why keep Japanese company goes through all the difficulties. Another thing is seniority, or what we call in Chinese called xiao. It's a Confucian value called or deference to the elderly. So when old people come, you should respect the old. You should give the way to the old. You should treat with the rituals, with all the manners to treat old people very carefully, very respectfully. So why this is important in Japan is like the CEO or the president of the company and the employees, the salary difference between them is kind of small. The Gini index, income inequality, is measured by Gini index. It's very small in Japan. So how, like, if I'm CEO, I own this, like, maybe I own you 200, 3,000 more than my employee. How come I want to be a CEO? I don't want to be, right? I want to earn more, according to capitalist logic. But in Japan, I don't own money. My rank or my standard is special by seniority. Because whenever I go, I'm a CEO, people give me respect, put me in the highest chair, blah, blah, blah. So that's when I feel satisfied, not through money, but through this loyalty or the respect from my employees or from the people. So that's why income inequality in Japan is very small. And lastly, everybody knows, like, Japan and South Korea is not pure market economy. They are they call it state capitalism or state corporations. The country, the government put so much emphasis to the company to develop it, because it's considered the welfare for the whole people, not just for this one company or one boss. That's why if you think about this way, it's all coming from the Confucian political and moral teachings. And culturally, I'm talking about the third point, traditional preservation and cultural renewal in Taiwan. These all kind of experienced renewal or revival of Confucian values after 1980s. For example, in Taiwan, in fact, I'm from mainland China, but if you talk to people from Taiwan, they preserved Chinese or Confucian values better than the Chinese, because they did not experience what they call the Cultural Revolution in 1960s and 70s, which in China destroyed many traditions, but Taiwan preserved that. And also, I'm again mentioning Singapore, basically preserved the order and value system by preserving the culture. So one controversial thing, I think 10 years ago, there's an American soldier, I think he committed a crime in Singapore. According to Singapore, and also according to actually Singapore law, part is derived from Confucianism. So he will be leashed, leashed for 30 leashes, whipped for 30 leashes. And of course, Americans said, no, we are like a democracy, how come you leash my people like this? So this is, you see the order, how Singapore still preserving the Confucianism values, even today. And South Korea, so one thing you can observe, the South Korea observed their tradition is about family dramas. Do you watch South Korean TV shows here? I heard from my students from Zayed University, the Korean language is their favorite language, and they most like to watch Korean dramas. One thing they said, because in Korean drama you find so many traditional values about how do you care your family, how do you deal with your parents, how do you deal with the relatives. So if you compare it with the dramas produced in mainland China, you will not find much of this. So which is going to the point that in many parts of China, the tradition, Confucian tradition, was destroyed or was suppressed for quite 20 years or 30 years. Especially in 1958, which I'm going to talk about the last point, right? We have a religious reform, and in that all the religions, Christianity, Buddhism, Confucianism, Islam, all are banned. You cannot have a religion. And so in 1966, we have a cultural revolution. So all the old culture will kind of be smashed. All this goes back to this early days, the 1919, the May 4th movement, or even earlier, the late 19th century, the reforms. Because when Confucianism, Chinese met the Western, they said, first they thought, okay, the Westerners are good at technology. Let's adopt that technology and keep our culture, or keep our religion, or political system. Then they find out it does not work. They were beaten badly by the Westerns. Then they said, okay, maybe our political system has a problem. Let's change this. They changed to some republicanism or constitutionalism from the emperor imperialism. But again, this does not work. They again failed. Then they said, okay, it's not about political or technology, it's about our culture. Let's change all our culture. So they changed the culture, which did not work either. So that's why, we have these 3 steps. But fortunately, we have something positive today. Although China had these revolutions, but we do some places preserved traditional values or traditional organizations, which is the 4th point I'm going to talk about. Social groups informed by traditional values and local accountability in rural China, which is the research done by a professor from MIT in USA. So what her research done, she went to rural China today. She found out that the people or villages which preserved the traditional values like Confucian temples, Buddhist temples, even the modern day Christian churches. And she didn't do research about mosques of Muslim population. He mainly did the family churches and Buddhist temples. He found out that those villages who kept the traditional values or traditional organization, or what we call social groups, are better than those without in terms of governance and accountability, in terms of less corruption. Why that's the case? As you see, like from 1990s state, the Chinese government kind of began to withdraw from the rural area, because if you keep the state government structure in the rural area, that will be too costly, too much. So they just leave it the local people to rule themselves. They kind of have some local election, like a village election. But without this traditional values to monitor, to have a moral accountability of those elected officials, and because this one-party rule does not work in the village very well. For example, a person, he was elected as a director of the village, and he's also a member of this family clan or family temple. So if the political way, the village failed to counter him, like put him in the right place, ask him not to be corruptive, that does not work very well, because this only the party or he's the only important person in the village. But if he's also a member of the family church or temple, there's people from this big group will press him, like, you should be a good person, you should behave morally. You will damage our relatives, our reputation. So this will provide more accountability in terms of the governance. And now in 1990s and 2000, China experienced huge debate about whether to revive, reinstall, or reconstruct traditional values, especially Confucianism. Now you have 2 sides. Those people who think we should revive the Confucianism is people we have Kang Youwei, New Confucianists, and Jiang Qing. These are just intellectuals. Their position is like, see, in modern state, in modern nation state, each country has their own national religion or major political ideology, which can hold people together. Hold people together. For example, Kang Youwei, he argued, we should establish a religion called Confucianism. There's no religion called Confucianism before the modern days. He said, like, see, Muslim has Islam, Christian has Christianity, and Hinduism has Hinduism. Every country has a religion. Why China does not have a religion? We should make Confucianism as a religion. So that's his position. He said this is the way to keep Chinese together, keep Chinese identity. And also we have a new Confucianist. There's a very famous 8 new Confucianists. They also proposed like they attacked modern ideology like nationalism or communism. They said these ideologies cannot help people to gain their life properly. They have no morality. So that's why we need Confucianism. And more recently, Jiang Qing, the last person for the revival, he's still alive today. And actually, he practiced Confucianism. Now he lives in a mountain and isolated himself from the world. He said, like, this way I'm going to revive the Confucianism, like this way. And there's another group who was against revival Confucianism as a Chinese religion or Chinese culture or Chinese ideology, whatever. So we have Chen Duxiu, Lu Xun, and Liu Xiaobo. So first person, Chen Duxiu, he's a communist. He said, like, all the traditional Chinese culture is rubbish. You know, there's nothing worse to be revived. It's eat people. This 吃人 means eat people. Why? Because you have no freedom, and you have no democracy, and you have no enlightenment. And secondly, the also very famous Lu Xun, he's a leftist writer, very famous writer. He shared the similar ideas. He said all the Confucian books, if you flip the Confucian books, there's only 2 words inside. You know, in Chinese it's called 奴隶, slaves. You know, the Confucian teach people to be slaves. You know, nothing else. So that's his critique. That's why you cannot revive it. And lastly, we have Liu Xiaobo. He's like a liberal intellectual. Now he's in prison in China, actually. He won Nobel laureate of peace. And his opinion of China, like, Chinese communist is wrong, Confucianism is wrong, and what China needs is we need to be ruled by the Western for another 300 years, and so that we can improve ourselves. We can really understand what is democracy, what is freedom. We should get rid of all of these traditional values. So I'm just picking up the most vocal, outspoken person for or against revivalism. Then we have a very famous Harvard professor, Tu Weiming. So Tu Weiming is, he himself considers himself like a modern Confucianist. So he's in between this for or against. He has a reflection on the Enlightenment. You know, I just read through the slide. The modernity or the modern intellect thought cannot achieve harmony between body and soul, self and society, human and nature, secularity and divinity. So all these things are vitally important for the welfare of humanity for the future. But if you only talk about the modernity from the West, it cannot achieve this harmony. For example, between body and soul. So modernity more care about your desires, your body, you know, your desire, what do you want? Your bodily want, your material want. Does not talk much about the soul. This is a standard critique about Western or Enlightenment thought. And self-society, this is that's to be a human. In Western Enlightenment, they always like to be yourself, to be yourself, self-autonomy, moral autonomy, political autonomy. Myself is the center. Myself is the center, and that's why the family, society, country, the world does not concern you. All these outside communities should serve my interest. So that's another standard critique of the Western modernity about automized individual or self-centered individual. And human and nature, this is another standard is Western modernity destroyed the environment and brings the damage to the environment, and which makes our human life unsustainable. So in contrast, the traditional values, as it's supposed here, is like we care about nature. We adjust our lifestyle in terms of nature. And of course, there's a thing of secularity and divinity. And modernity, to the larger part of it, is secular modernity or secular civilization, including the nationalism and communism, which was adopted by the Chinese intellectuals. They less emphasize the Confucian values about human relationship, about society, which ignores some part of the Confucian teachings about divinity. As we know, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and other monotheistic religions, they teach about the afterlife, about God, right? About transcendental existence. How about Confucianism? Is Confucianism secular? So that was a question we have to clarify here. Many modern intellectuals, they found, oh, see, we don't want Christianity, we don't want Judaism, we don't want Islam. We found Confucius a nice guy because he does not talk about God too much. He does not talk about afterlife too much. In fact, that's the wrong understanding. So Confucius is very humble and appreciate personality. So he talked about at least 2 points. He said, if I offended the heaven, then I have nowhere to pray. If I offended the heaven, I have nowhere to pray. So heaven in Chinese means Tian. Many Muslim intellectuals, Christian intellectuals means Tian, or heaven means God in Chinese, because above. So we don't. This concept is a little bit weak compared to Allah or God in the monotheist religions. But nevertheless, Confucians realized that there is something supernatural. There is something beyond our human life. We should pray to. We should ask for the forgiveness. On the other hand, Confucius said we should. Why we should talk about more about this life rather than afterlife? Because we don't know much about next life. You know, if you want to talk about genes or ghosts or the gods, after something after, like, what's your evidence? You know, in our book we don't have this. You know, so don't speak it. You know, we will keep the reverence here. So my interpretation to this verse is Chinese did not really get the revelation, or the revolution tradition was purposefully destroyed. That's why Confucius cannot talk about the religion in the Western sense. And last one about this debate about the revival is about there's a secularization thesis, means principle that since modern times people will become less and less religious, which is totally not true in China. In China, since 1980s, we have seen all the religions revived. More and more people become religious. This is the trend. And even so, according to one Chinese professor, he said by 2025 or by 2030, China will become the largest religious country in the world. But this religious means which religion? Do you know? Christianity. So China will become the largest Christian country in the world in 20 years. During the Q&A, we can talk about more why that's the case. But the point is Chinese are becoming more and more religious. So next slide, I'm going to talk about how tradition revive appeared in China. So just give you examples. In 1968, there's a Chinese Confucian intellectual made a call that we should revive our traditional. That's the start. And especially in 1980s, Chinese began slowly losing interest in communism or socialism. They turned to tradition. And there's a revival of national studies called Guoxue. All the old books about Confucianism and Buddhism, all people began to read them again. So for 30 years, like my parents, they never read these traditional Confucian books. They all read these socialist, communist book. Nowadays, we can read these books. People began to realize the importance of this one. And also we have, even for the government, for our leaders, they began to talk about, and they used to say, okay, our country is a communist country, our rule is communist rule. But now they slightly changed the language. They said, rule of a virtue, harmonious society or harmonious world. Chinese way, Chinese dream. So they are also use Confucian values to justify communist rule or justify the current regime. So not only we rule by communism, we rule by virtue. Virtue is a very Confucian term. Also, we rule by harmony. Harmony is also central point of Confucian ideas. And last year, in the anniversary of Confucian's death, the Chinese President Xi Jinping, he made a very long talk. And he said, actually, this is the first time the Communist Party leader speak in a anniversary of a traditional figure like Confucianism. Never a communist leader will speak for the traditional figure like Confucianism. And on the grass level, for the normal people, we see so many growth up of traditional groups. We have a Confucius society, Confucian groups, and even some people when they get married, they revive the old way of Confucian way to the ceremony. See, the modern Chinese, when you get married, you just it's very simple. It's very simple. Actually, there's a few procedures, but in older way, you have to kowtow, kneel down and worship kowtow to heaven, to earth, to your parents. So a lot of rituals, very prayers. So this is what we saw the Chinese today. And before I conclude, I'll just briefly mention we have, even though we see the revival of Confucianism or traditional culture in China, we face so many challenges, And for example, conserve or consume. So there's a talk about people think, when you revive Confucianism or tradition, it's not really you are believing in it or you want it. Actually, you are making it a culture product, or you have nothing to do. Now you are better off. You have money. You want to buy some traditional paintings. You want to pretend you are knowledgeable your culture. So there's this critique that this kind of revival is not genuine. It's just consumer of culture, consumer of a tradition. So is it true or not? So this is another challenge we are facing. And the second one is the state or the religion. This has happened in history. So now we already passed that period, but I just want to show during the period of time in early 20th century, there's a challenge for Chinese is if you want to be Confucian, you cannot have China. If you want to be China, you cannot be Confucian. So you can only choose one. So which one China choose? China choose China, choose the state. They said, okay, for Confucian we can put aside for some moment. Let's focus on to be strengths, to build our nation, build our country first. For culture, we leave it. We can adopt nationalism, and adopt technology, adopt communism in order for our country to survive, to develop then. So today we still have this topic, So if you want to develop Confucianism, people say, oh, no, don't do this. If you develop Confucianism, it will damage our country or damage our state. Is it so? So that's the thing we need to think. And number 3 is material and spiritual well-being. So this is everyone knows how to achieve both. So we want both material success and spiritual. So, but it could be difficult. And lastly, so today, last week, I gave a discussion about Confucian revival in China. In that talk, my tone is a little bit neutral or even negative about the revival, because I said China has very, very painful experience with modernity. Now for us to have this Confucian revival or talk about Confucian, we go through too much sacrifice, too much violence, too much struggles. So these are things, the challenge. I'm not sure if we really revive Confucianism, whether it's going to affect us again. But the history tells China had a very painful experience with this. Somebody can read Arabic. Is this the last slide or the conclusion? Okay. I think I misjumped this one. Now, this the things you're going to take away. Like, if you want to revive your tradition, or if you want to think about it, and you can look at China's experience, China's lessons, how China is successful or failed. How can you learn from the Chinese experience? Now, the most important thing is, from my Chinese point of view, is like you must have a very strong state or political entity in order to have a very meaningful revival of your own tradition. If your country is divided, in conflict, is not strong, or the people are welfare is not improved, you talk about revivalism is too early, I think. It's too early. So with this note, I end my presentation. Thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum.